So I've never really been the biggest trigger warning guy. I believe that most adults, as long as it's not something extremely illicit or traumatizing, can handle sensitive topics and can, you know, I guess partake in serious discussions. But this video today is a little different because I'm going to be talking a little bit about some stuff with real life, depression, and just mental health issues and things like that. I am not a doctor. I cannot give medical advice to anyone. All I can ever do is really talk about my experiences with this topic and the experiences of my friends who have shared it with me, vaguely, in terms of not naming and shaming anyone, but just talking about things I know people go through. And this is a very important video to me. It's something I probably talk about once or twice a year, with different titles and different, I guess, angles. I'm going to be putting some gameplay in the background, just me playing games, and I know that for some people they don't really like the more serious stuff, but I do think it's important to sometimes think about. So that's what today's video is. If you do enjoy it and you want to see more videos from this channel, you want to leave a like and subscribe. I highly doubt this video will be something that YouTube really wants to push since it is a little serious, but we'll see. I think it's important to talk about either way because I know a lot of you who are in this community, who watch this channel, do deal with issues like this, or you know people who do. Now, this is a video I could probably make several hours long if I were to get into all the intricacies of it. It's very complex, but at the end of the day, I have several mental health problems and just health problems in general, dealing from anxiety disorder and depression, like medically diagnosed depression that I have to take medication for, all the way down to a chronic pain disability that really adds to those things, among other things. I also have OCD problems and some more that's probably not even worth getting into, but things are not all at 100% always upstairs in my brain. When it comes down to it, lately I've been dealing with a lot of depression issues and just a lot of lack of motivation. I wouldn't say I'm burned out with YouTube or anything like that. More like I put so much into it in terms of so many eggs in that basket, and I care so much about it that it compounds with these issues sometimes. And I have a really hard time with, I guess I should say, putting my self-worth into the work I do. Where, like, if things don't do as well as I think they should, I feel like it's a reflection on my work ethic. Like, for example, if I talk about a topic that's lesser viewed, maybe I think, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing good enough. I'm not doing what people deserve to see. I'm not doing right by them. And there's a lot of like imposter syndrome and guilt in that kind of feeling that I think a lot of people don't notice, that I think a lot of people don't notice when it's in people around them. And it's so easy to fake it and play it off and pretend that those kinds of feelings are not there. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this stuff lately is because it's kind of been a bit of a kick in the pants for me to actually think about it and think about how, not like in the terms of, well, other people have it harder, so you shouldn't feel, but just in terms of how lucky I am in some ways in my life and things that I need to work on in other areas of my life to find more happiness, to be happier and more fulfilled. People will find fulfillment in a lot of different ways. A lot of people, they will seek it out in relationships. I think we all have kind of a hole in us, not just the one in our butt, but also just kind of in our spirit, in our soul, or in our being, whatever you want to call it, that people are looking for purpose. People look for reason. People look for a calling. For some people, they try and find it in humanism, like the celebration of their humanity and in relationships with other people. For some people, they seek it out in religious contexts, the belief in God or gods or any kind of spiritualism. But I do believe that we all look for a purpose. We all look for something to care about and something that gives our life more value than just the sake of being alive. Even people who believe mostly in nihilism, who continue to push on through nihilism, they still talk about how they find meaning in things. They find reasons to exist. I think everybody looks for that kind of thing. And I think it's really hard to see sometimes that there are a lot of people who struggle to find those reasons, to find those things. Something that's really resonated with me lately and was really surprising to me, not to just make this about me, like, look how great I am, is when I get messages from people, I've gotten a few from people saying, like, I was going to exit the planet. That's the YouTube friendly way to say it. But something you said in a video mattered to me and made me reconsider that. Or like, I was going to, I don't know, log out of life. Can't believe we have to dance around topics like this on an adult platform, but we do. And, you know, you made some silly video about Spider-Man and I thought about something and now I want to do this. You know, those kinds of things are crazy to me. And I see a tiny fraction of the people that I affect in life, positive and negative. And the reason I'm using myself as an example for that is because I think that this is true for all of us. You know, it's actually crazy to me how little interactions can change people's lives so much. You know, something as simple as holding the door open for someone could be the straw that broke the camel's back. You know, you could encounter someone out in the world. I don't want to put, you know, survivor's guilt on anyone here, but you really could encounter someone out in the world who is on their last straw, who feels beaten down and broken and abused and mistreated, maybe at home. They are treated very poorly, physically or mentally or both. And that person, you choose to hold the door open for them. Or you choose to basically just drop it on them as one final, like, fuck you. Like no one cares about you. And you're not even thinking about it that way. You know, you're just out living your life. And those kinds of interactions can have such a butterfly effect, such a massive impact on people around us. Cosmo is jumping up on my desk. Those things can have such a massive impact on people around us that we just don't even ever see, you know? And I think that that's something really crazy to me thinking about is how much we affect other people and how much impact we have on other people. And there's going to be people where no matter what you do, you can't reach them. You know, maybe they are just so deep in their own crap, or mental issues or their health problems or whatever, that there's really nothing you can do. But I always think it's worth trying. And I wanted to share a story that, I don't know if I've ever shared on this channel or not. I think I've talked about it very briefly on my Let's Play channel, but it's an example of this for me. The people involved in this story are not people who are even friends with me anymore. In fact, without naming names or bad-mouthing them really, I want to say that one of the people involved in this actually treated me very, very poorly in high school. And I don't really talk to this person anymore because of this. But this person, I remember that I was on my class senior trip. And I was thinking about how I felt like my life didn't have any purpose. This was in high school. I was about 17 years old, maybe 18. And I was thinking about how I felt like my life didn't have any purpose. Nobody really cared about me. There was nothing really to continue for. There was really no point. Except for my mom and dad, who I knew would miss me if I ever disappeared. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about it because we were high up on a mountain for this senior trip. Which I'm shocked they even let you do now. Feels like it would be a little, I don't know, unsafe. But anyways, that's where we were. And I was thinking about how if I just decided to, I'll say, go down the mountain very quickly and despawn myself, it wouldn't really matter in the grand scope of things. Who cares? And I remember thinking that and just kind of thinking about it. And then someone in my high school class asked me, like, hey, you seem kind of sad. You look a little down. Do you want to come out to breakfast with us? And it was just somebody that I barely knew that really didn't even treat me that well senior year, but decided to show interest in my life in that moment and took me out to breakfast and just talked to me for a little bit. And I remember that was enough for me to just decide I don't really want to do this right now. And it kind of went on and on to the point where it just never happened. You know what I mean? Like it never materialized in that way. And I heard another story about that, not related to me, that really struck a chord with me. I think I talked a little bit about it in a previous video at some point, but it was about Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, the pirate game. And it was about how someone was planning to do this, and they thought about it, and basically they and their sibling ended up playing Assassin's Creed, and they got so into it and so excited for it that he just kept putting it off to the point where he kind of just stopped thinking about it. And then a year had gone by and his feelings on it had changed, and he's still alive today. You know, there are these things that in life, something as simple, like I said, as holding the door open for someone, showing basic human kindness, showing interest in someone, in my case, those things, even making a video game or making a movie, you know, there's someone out there, like, we can meme on movies all we want. We can call The Flash The Flush all we want. But there's somebody out there who The Flash deeply resonated with them on a almost spiritual level and added meaning to their life. It's crazy how much so little can do for people, positively or negatively, being their last straw or being the thing that keeps them going. And I guess the reason I really wanted to share this, overall, I've probably said the reason I wanted to share this a few times here, because I don't have a script, I'm just talking. Stream of consciousness. I suppose for me, one of the main reasons I wanted to talk about this is because it's crazy to me to hear from people how anything I did impacted them, and the butterfly effect of how it worked. You know, if that person hadn't shown interest in me in high school, and this is not even a person I like anymore. Like I said, they were mean to me, like the rest of the year after this, which is kind of nuts. But if that person hadn't shown that interest in that moment, I might not be here anymore. You know, and then if, say, I did something after that, like I got a message a couple of times saying, like, hey, this video really resonated with me and made me change my mind on the value of life, which is crazy to me. I'm not saying that to, like, toot my own horn, because I don't understand it. I don't understand how me making a video about Star Wars could, like, resonate with someone in that way, but things do. And when I get a message like that, it's like, but that person who talked to me, right? If they hadn't done that and I hadn't been around, then what would have happened to that person? And that person, who did they go on to affect? You know, there's so many consequences to our actions that we don't see. And it's something that I try and live by. It's very hard. I am under a lot of scrutiny and criticism, even with a smaller channel like this, just because when people see the numbers, they don't like you automatically. There's a lot of people who just don't, because they'll think like you're just a dick or like you must be full of yourself or something. But for me, every day when I log in here and I do videos and stuff, it's just incredible to me to be able to impact people in any way. You know, to have people who are like, I want to support you and help you, or I really cared about what you said about this thing. Those things are just mind-boggling to me and just fascinating to hear that in any way I affect people positively. And I think it's so easy to lose track of that, to mistreat people or neglect people or not check on them. And another thing that happened to me, I remember in high school, was I lost track of a friend who transferred to a different school. It was one of my best friends, and it was just, I was going through a lot of depression. I had just been diagnosed with my disability issues, and I was really angry at the world. I felt really cheated, and I felt like I got dealt a bad hand compared to other people. Even though I got a much better one in a lot of ways than a lot of people. When you're a kid, it's like you don't really see that, you know? And I just felt very angry, disenfranchised, and cheated, and I felt like there was just no point to like keep in contact with people. And then I found out a year later that my friend had tried to do that to himself, had tried to leave the planet himself. And to just kind of realize, like, maybe this is not to, you know, again, survivor's guilt type thing. To realize, hey, you know what? Maybe if I had tried harder and kept in more contact with that person, I could have affected them positively in a different way. Or maybe it would have done nothing. But maybe I could have. You know, and that's kind of one of the things that kickstarted me thinking about that. Even though, ironically, I thought about partaking in that activity myself afterwards, because that's what mental health issues can do to people. You know, and by the way, I am not at all in that way anymore. Like, I don't feel like doing that kind of thing to myself anymore. I feel like I have a lot to live for. I have a wonderful wife. I have a great family. I have my little cats. I have a very amazing community and audience who, even though I am at times distant from, because I'm more private than you think, I'm very grateful for. I have wonderful friends. I don't know if I already said that. You know, I don't really feel that way anymore, but if you had told me that I wouldn't feel that way when I was in 10th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade, I would have said you're absolutely nuts. And if you had told me that I would have felt that way, would have felt like I didn't belong on the planet or there was no point to my existence when I was a child, I would have said that's stupid too. We change so much over the course of our lives. And it's so important to think about the impact you have on other people. And also just to think about what you have to live for, what you can do and how much impact you really do have. There's all these huge things that are always looming over us, like mega corporations and societal standards and insane political opinions and politics and extremism, whether it be racial or religious or anti-religious or whatever. All these big ideas and money and societal concepts, they're pushing down on us a lot, constantly putting pressure on us. And sometimes it becomes so hard to keep track of the person next to you. You're so focused on the big picture of I feel like I'm a little cog in the machine. What can I actually do? Do I matter? And all this stuff. But we don't remember how much we matter to the people around us, how much that sense of community matters. There's so much isolation in the modern world with being always connected, but always alone. You can sit in a room with your family and you're all on your phone. You're all talking to someone, but you're not really caring about each other in the way you should be. I think there's so much crap constantly shoved down our throats to distract us, to pacify us, to make us not think about things that matter. And it's so easy to lose track, I guess, of the person next to you, to lose track of the humanity of them and how that matters. And, there's a lot of reasons that people find that matters. Atheists, they will find their reasons for it. Religious people, they will find their reasons for it, for why people matter, But I truly do believe that they do. And yet it's so easy to lose track of that and so easy to get buried in your own crap and the crap all pushed down around you and feel worthless. And it's important to know that you don't feel that way alone. A lot of people who you think would never feel that way do. All the time. Every day. I found that I had depression probably for the first time. And it was when a quote, when I really understood it, a quote from Freddie Mercury really stuck with me. And I'm not going to get the quote right because it's not in front of me. But it was essentially that I can walk into a room full of people and feel entirely alone. And our brains are so, that's the end of the quote, but our brains are so fallible and so imperfect and so emotional, or in some cases anti-emotional, maybe because of some trauma or some kind of birth thing, that it's so easy to feel like there's no impact and no purpose, but I really don't believe that's true. No matter what reason you find for believing in it, I have quite a few. I shared this story on my horror channel, actually, and I will link to it in the description or the pinned comment or both. But it's up to you if you want to check it out. I'm going to TLDR it. I think I've talked about it here once, maybe. My personal upbringing was religious, and for a very long time, I didn't believe in any of that anymore. I was very against it, actually. I felt like, well, if anything was out there that cared about me, that did exist, why would it screw me over? Why would I be given such a bad hand with my disability issues and my mental health and all this stuff? How can the problem of evil, how can evil exist? And some people are still going to think that. And honestly, I respect that objection to these beliefs. That's fine. I'm not here to convert anyone or to be overtly religious. I'm here to entertain. But sometimes I want to talk about something serious, which is what this is. And it's just my personal belief in vague terms. I remember, I was driving home one day. As I used to be a kind of a reckless driver as a teen, not when I was around other people, but when it was just me on a road by myself, I just kind of was like, whatever. And I remember spinning out on an icy turn and ending up in oncoming traffic of a highway and believing that my life was done and just not really caring. I think I was in my first year of college and I was like, well, I already lived longer than I thought I would. I don't really know what my future is. I don't feel like I have one. I don't feel like I have a purpose. Nobody really wants me around except my parents. I hope they'll be okay without me. That was just my genuine thoughts. This was before YouTube, before, really anything. And I closed my eyes because I thought, well, I'm done. There's nothing I can do here. I mean, I'm on ice. I'm spinning out. That's it. And I opened my eyes and my car was back on the road, going the way it should. It had swerved back onto the road. It was almost like my car had been picked up and put back on the road by something. And in that moment, I felt cared about. I felt like there must be a reason for me to exist. And here is my point. Before people get upset, I know a lot of people have had negative interactions and beliefs, and issues with religious beliefs. My point is not, here's why you should believe what I believe. My point is this. If that hadn't happened, no matter what it was, I wouldn't be around today. That was years ago. That was probably 2015, maybe 2014. I wouldn't even exist now. Anyone that I affected the lives of wouldn't have happened. Maybe something else would have. Maybe there's some person out there that I helped continue to exist. Maybe something else would have. Maybe nothing would have. There's such a butterfly effect of us being here, us partaking in life, us being kind, treating people with respect. No matter what your beliefs are, the golden rule, treating others how you want to be treated, not being a narcissist who thinks they're the main character in every scenario. There is a lot to be said of those things. And in that moment, I felt cared about, and it reaffirmed some of my beliefs. Now, I don't have some of the same beliefs that some people do. There's a lot of things I believe about spirituality and religion and organized religion and even the concept of God that some people don't agree with or don't, believe. That would be a stereotypical Christian or deist or whatever. But my point is not, hey, look at me in this moment, I, became a very religious person. My point is, in that moment, I don't know what happened. I cannot explain it to you. I've had people try and explain it to me. I've had people tell me, well, you must have blacked out and you were just so smart that you subconsciously got back on the road on your own. It's like, well, geez, that's a very glowing review of such a dumb person that I am, but thank you. I don't think that happened. Is it possible? Sure. And you know what? At the end of the day, does it even really matter? To some people, it absolutely will. To some people, that story will reaffirm their belief in God or in gods or in spirits or in whatever. They will say, that was God. God saved you. Or they will say, that was you. That was the human survival instinct that saved you. But at the end of the day, no matter what it was, to me, I can't explain it. I can tell you what I thought it was, and I thought it was something above me looking out for me, whether that be an angel or God or whatever you want to call it. But you know what? Even if it was me, or even if it was just chance, a roll of the dice, the car fixed itself, righted itself, which technically through mathematics could happen. Through chances, that could happen. No matter what it was, it made it so that I was still on Earth. It made it so that I still continued to live and exist. I went on to affect the final days of my father's life, who passed from cancer. And I know that I made the end of his life better. That's not to toot my own horn. I know I did. I took as damn good care of that guy as I could, because he was one of my best friends in the world. And if I hadn't been around, his end days would have been sadder. I know that there are people who have reached out to me who I have affected that I never would have. I never would have existed to do so. I know that there are companies that I have put to task and held accountable for things that have been forced to publicly answer certain things that they've done or said that wouldn't have happened otherwise. I know that there are people who would have never been introduced to amazing art because they just didn't see some video from my channel. Maybe they would have seen it from someone else, but somebody that maybe I say, hey, this video game's really underrated. I think you'd really like this movie. And then that movie that somebody else made entirely that I had nothing to do with, I just was like a middleman saying like, hey, check this out. That movie went on to affect them in some amazing way. And they became a creator, or they went on to show kindness to someone else. You know what I mean? Those things are crazy to me. And my channel, me as a person, is a microcosm of things that do that. you look at these people, in positions of actual power, where you'll see someone, Markiplier is a great example for me. Jacksepticeye, even someone like PewDiePie, who I know people have conflicting opinions on from a lot of stuff, but those guys, they've affected a lot of lives, and they all started from not that much. It's crazy to me. I'm walking a fine line where I don't want to sound like my whole point of this was to be like, and that's why my channel mattered, and that's why my life matters, and why you should be like me. I don't want to do that, because I truly don't believe that. It's why I introduced this video talking about the imposter syndrome stuff and just the overwhelming feeling of all of this whenever I talk about it. It's very above me, very much bigger than me. But some of these things, I understand that evil hurts people for this, and it really strips a lot of meaning from people. But when I see the meaning behind someone like PewDiePie, who went from working at a hot dog stand to having 100 million subscribers, who has positively affected a lot of lives, when I see that kind of person, or when I see my life where I went from nothing to having a community that honestly is really cool. That I'm not saying I never have problems with my community. There's times where people say stuff I'm like, just don't. Why are you doing that? There's times where I make a video and I try and do something I'm really passionate about, and a lot of people in my community don't see it or don't care, and it hurts my feelings, and I say, well, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, there's never going to be a perfect situation. But it's crazy to me to say, like, hey, I went from somebody not valuing my life to somebody who affected even one person to value theirs. That there is something very humbling about that I think a lot of people miss. It's very sad to me that a lot of people in Hollywood, a lot of people who are musicians, who are very big, actual famous people, they miss that. They go so much for the clout and for fame and all this stuff that they don't think about that. But for me, a lot of what I do here is a vehicle to try and take away a little bit of pain from someone, to make someone check out a video game, to make someone watch a review and forget about how poorly their family treats them for 20 minutes, that kind of stuff. It's why I push myself so hard with these things and care, because that kind of thing matters to me, to be able to have an impact. Every time I can have an impact on other people, and they can go on to have an impact on someone else, and the world gets better, I think it's very important. Last week, and I still feel this way, I talked about my wife's work and how frustrating it was to me in terms of a situation that was going on, that is still going on. And I don't regret that video at all. It resonated with a lot of people, the negative feelings and the frustration. And I think it's very good to be vulnerable sometimes and human. But I also think a follow-up like this is very important, because it's so easy to be weighed down by all of that crap and to feel so helpless and to feel so like nothing matters. And there are definitely times where I still feel that way. And I want to be transparent on that sometimes and talk about that. Just like I want to make, movie reviews on this channel, video game reviews, and make news videos about stuff going on and talk about comics sometimes. This is a channel that I just try and use to be me. And I know that doesn't connect with some people, and that's fine. That's just who I am. But to be able to use something like this to talk about those things, it also does give me a lot of meaning and a lot of purpose. And I truly do feel like there are reasons that I exist on this planet. And I can only speak to my own experience, but the overall, crux of this is that I feel the same way about you. If you made it to this point in the video, you either fell asleep because I must have the most soothing, nerdy voice of all time, or maybe something struck a chord with you, maybe something resonated with you, or maybe you even wanted to get to the end so you could have the absolute most ammo to nitpick the video with. I don't really know. But no matter who you are, I do believe that outside of being like a serial killer or a child grabber, there is a reason that you still exist. There is a reason that your life really matters. And you can go on to have amazing positive impacts on people. It's just if you want to. If you want to put that effort in, if you want to look for the positive, if you want to get help, no matter what avenue you seek that in. Maybe it's medication that really can help a lot of people. Maybe it's a mental health professional, like a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Maybe it's just talking to a youth group advisor, like your youth group leader or your pastor or maybe it's talking to your local spiritual leader. I don't know what it is for you. But seeking that help and finding those purposes and finding ways to give back to the world and impact things. Volunteering at a food shelter for a couple hours, giving $20 to a group that helps the homeless. These things, they are ways that you can impact the world around you that the world feels so immovable. It feels so much like you cannot impact it. And like the people who do are people who are larger than life. Presidents, billionaires, CEOs, rock stars. But we can have a lot more impact than we think just as normal people if we are willing to put the effort in and put the kindness in and put the respect in. And it's so hard sometimes. Sometimes when you're just having a bad day, you do want to drop the door on the person behind you. Not to hurt them, but because you're like, I just don't care. I'm not taking the extra 5 seconds. But sometimes those things, asking your friend, how are you doing today? Showing actual interest, not being like, how are you doing? And someone says something and you're like, yeesh, baggage, no thanks. But showing actual human compassion and interest in people, inviting someone out to lunch, talking to someone for an extra 2 minutes that you normally wouldn't give them. These things, they're so hard to do, especially in Western society where we are very self-focused. We are very self-driven, and it's all about being self-made in a system that wants to keep you where you are because you are controllable there. That's how it works. And every system has that kind of exploitation, no matter where it's from, but I can only speak to the one I live in extremely well. But when you're in that system, you feel pushed down on and like a piece on a board game, like a piece on a Monopoly board, or like a side character or a throwaway character. But we all long to be a main character. We all long to have purpose and to have value and to do something. I think especially young men, in a lot of cases, I'm only speaking to this because there is actual psychological studies on this too. A lot of young men, they desire to be a hero. They desire to be a warrior. They desire to be someone who impacts the world. But the world is already very largely settled. It's hard to do in today's era. We're not Vikings anymore, or we're not Spartans. We're not, you know what I'm saying? They'll go to the military and try and find that. And then sometimes they do. Sometimes they get wrapped up in stuff they really hate. They will go to try and find that by joining a gang, by picking fights, and to try and find this sense of community and purpose and manhood and warriorhood. And it's so easy to mistake strength and brutality and a feral nature for purpose, for being that. But that's not what it is. Sometimes being a warrior is knowing when to drop the sword, when to show kindness, when to show mercy. Sometimes being steadfast in your beliefs is knowing when it's time to say, I understand your objection to this thing I believe, but not saying you're a big dumb idiot. Sometimes being purpose-filled is showing that kindness to someone. There's a lot of, I feel like I'm kind of getting rambly, but there's a lot of ways to find meaning, and there's a lot of things that do matter. And I truly do believe that the people we affect go on to affect other people, go on to affect other people. And if you don't believe that, look at history, look at the negative, look at slaughters, look at genocides, look at when people were mistreated racially or sexually or any of these things. Those things went on to hurt them. And that trauma was passed down through generations of people. Generations of people. That's human ability to impact negatively. Think about how much impact we could have positively if we were just willing to put the effort in and try and hold on just a little while longer. What was the quote from Spider-Man 2, one of the movies that has affected my life the most in my time on Earth? It was from Aunt May. Sometimes to be a hero, you have to give up the things, basically it's like sometimes to do what's right, you need to give up the things you want the most, even your dreams. Like sometimes there are moments where something that is self-serving is just so close to you, you could just reach out and grab it. But do you do that at the detriment, at the pain of the person next to you? Do you screw them over to get ahead? Or do you do what's right? And it's something I've really tried my best to live by. It's something I've really tried my best to think about. Because it's so easy. Let everything weigh you down, feel hopeless, snatch victory, push everyone else out of the way to get on top. But once you are, you always want more anyway. There's no end to it. You're always chasing something. And if you're always chasing something, if you're always chasing a meaning, why not chase a meaning that gives back to other people? Why not chase a meaning of kindness? Why not chase a meaning that can preserve lives? Why not chase a meaning that affects people? I don't know. I think that those things are very important to think about. And I don't have all the answers. I can't give people medical advice. I can't give people, a path to what they believe. I mean, I could throw the Bible at people. I could say, check out God, because I believe in God. But, for some people, that's not gonna, they just don't. They can't force themselves to believe in something like that. So where do they find their meaning? Well, someone who's Islamic could say, well, what about my God? What about Allah? And there's going to be people who don't connect with that, who that just, they don't believe it. They can't force themselves to. There's going to be people who say, what about Buddhism? And there's going to be people who say, well, I don't find meaning in that, but they find it somewhere else. And my point isn't, here's the way to find the meaning. My point is that it's worth searching for meaning. It's worth sticking around to affect people. It's worth the kindness. It's worth the struggle. It's worth it. Can't tell people where to find the value. I can't. But I can tell you that if you start being kind, you start reaching out to others, reaching out a hand to others, you start showing compassion, you start showing kindness instead of, well, I had it hard, so therefore I'm going to make it hard for everyone else. You start being better than those people who are like that by being kind. There are reasons out there to live. There are purposes and there is happiness. I can tell you what I believe. I can tell you what other people believe. I have friends who are atheists. I have friends who are Hindu. I have friends who are Christian. I have friends who are Islamic. They find purposes. Purpose might not be the same, but they find them. And they are all good people who have connected with and given back to people in the world. And yet, if they just gave up, none of those people would have impacted me positively the way they have. It's just crazy to think about. I know it was a long video. I apologize for the length if maybe this was too much. And I understand this video will not connect with everyone. And some people will think, well, Jay, you're full of shit. And I understand that. When people used to tell me, when I was at my most depressed and people used to say like, hey, buddy, stick in there. There's a purpose. I'd be like, go to hell. You don't know what I'm going through. You have no idea. Kind of like the you're not my real dad energy. But I truly do believe this. And I do believe that even if you think I'm full of it right now, and you think I'm just a moron who has no idea what you're going through, maybe we're going through different things. But I can tell you, from yesterday when I was so depressed, I didn't get out of bed. And I slept most of the day. And I just felt like there was no point to my life. And I had to kind of pick my pieces up and pull myself out of it and remember why there was. I can tell you that even if we are going through different things, or you're going through something else than someone down your block, or your cousin, or your mother, or your dad, or whoever it is that's going through something, or your best friend you don't even know is going through something. Maybe you reaching out and checking on them is the thing that saves their life. We don't know. But no matter who it is that's going through something different than you, there are a lot of people who are going through something, who do need you. You do matter. There are no two of us that are the exact same. There's somebody out there very much like me, but they are not me. They're not my same person, my same spirit. They will never have the same impact as me. And you know what? That's good because they will go on to have their own impact. That can be positive or it can be negative. You hear about serial killers. You hear about how they grew up in like an abusive home and they started out as a nobody, and they took the lives of so many people. You hear about people like Dr. Martin Luther King, who went on to inspire so many people. You hear, you know what I'm saying? Like, you hear about all these people, and they all kind of start at ground zero. They all kind of start at just a base human being, base stats human being. And they can go on to have a positive impact or a negative impact in amazing or horrific ways, or they can go on to really not have an impact, not care, and just kind of fade into obscurity and go away. But even then, they still have some impact on the people around them. They still weren't there for the people who needed them. They still didn't chase what they were looking for in life. They still pass away empty because they just kind of lived life like a husk. It's just crazy to think about. I don't know. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this video, positive or negative, I guess. I don't have all the answers, but I truly do believe that there is a reason to exist. And I hope that this affected one person. If one person leaves this and is like, you know what? I was thinking about it, but this changed some of my viewpoints. That's enough for me. Even if that one person's the only person who watches, that's an impact for me that I care about. And I appreciate you very much. Thank you. I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'm not going to do the normal outro because it feels a little self-serving. Of like, blah, blah, blah. But I will say that I appreciate you. I'm glad you exist. Thank you for checking out my channel. It means a lot to me. Have a fantastic day. And as always, stay shui.